Welcome back to 1834 Restoration House.
It is a cold fall morning and we're out here all bundled up, and we have some outside work that really needs to get done today. So when we come back, we'll show you what that is.
Today's program is sponsored by the generous support of our patrons. Your support helps to further our historic preservation efforts. For more information, visit patreon.com/1834 Restoration House.
We have problems here at the Old Victorian. First of all, our gutters have been leaking. They've been leaking for a long, long time, way before we got here, and they've been leaking and dripping all over the porch deck, and that's caused rot. So we're going to try to fix both of those today. Now, getting up to the gutters on this house poses a little bit of a problem. As you can see, they're way up there. This house has 10-foot high ceilings inside the rooms, and the house is probably a couple of feet higher than where I'm standing right now. We don't have a ladder that's tall enough to get up that high, but now that we've got the truckster over here, we're going to go get one, and we'll pick up some lumber too, which is why we bought this thing in the first place, so we can bring materials, tools, and supplies back here and do proper work. The Mini Cooper's just not up to that task. Well, we're back now. We managed to get an extension ladder and a piece of lumber. Now, this piece of lumber is not like most in that it's actually dimensional lumber. What that means is the board is not 3/4 of an inch thick like you'd find at the home centers. This one actually is 1 inch thick, which is the same thickness as the board that's coming out of there, which is great. And yes, I did find this at the home center. Now, the three biggest enemies of a house, and not just old houses like ours, but even houses like yours, is fire, water, and termites. Any one of those three can do serious damage to a house. Some of it's instant, but the others take a much longer time to do their damage, and damage they will. So we need to stay on top of stuff like that. Make sure that you don't have water leaks, take care of your gutters, take care of your roof, but most importantly, after that, make sure you repair the damage that was caused, otherwise it'll continue to rot. This is an example of what the board looked like when we first bought the house. You could see that the paint was broken, the wood was a little bit punky, and we knew even then that it would need attention someday. So my plan is to cut these two boards out back to the first joist, and then we'll cut the other board up and install it down in here and essentially make a repair. Now, this is what you call advanced decay. Well, looking down inside here, I can tell already that there's going to be more damage done than just the boards themselves. It looks to me like this piece here, which is actually a piece of quarter round that goes underneath here, that's rotted. Possibly the sill joist is rotted out as well. I don't know exactly what it is that I'm pushing on here, but whatever it is very punky, very rotted. So like I said, it's a temporary repair. When we do get to redo this porch, all of that stuff will have to be addressed. Okay, clearly this is not the first time the porch has been worked on, because right there you can see a seam where some other boards were replaced. And I'm guessing that it was probably done for the exact same reason that we're doing ours today, is that the ends rotted out, they needed to be replaced. In fact, there are places along here where you can see, not on this one, but some others, where the bottoms of the porch columns had rotted out and they were spliced in. So clearly there's been work done here before, but look at that. If you sight along that and you come to here, here's another board that was replaced. And there's another board that has a seam in it. So put two together, there's probably a joist that runs right under here and under my foot. So I'm going to cut an exploratory hole right here and see what I can find out. So this is a multi-tool, and anybody who's doing this kind of work really needs to get one. They're not terribly expensive, or they don't have to be. But the thing is, they can do a plunge cut, and I could surgically cut right here between the boards. Now, in the old days, with circular saws, we would have to make cuts, and we'd get into the next board here and leave a partial saw mark there. And that wasn't good. We'd have to fill it up and try to conceal it. But with these new tools, you can just go right down through it, no problem. I'm trying to get this board out of here, and whenever I lift up on it, it's lifting up the adjacent board, which makes me wonder if this was originally tongue and groove, because I don't see any right here, but then it is pretty rotted. So, well, now wait a minute. I do feel something here that kind of feels like a tongue. So, let's see, how should we fix that? By the way, I can see down in under the house now, I've got a little bit of a cavity, but let me come back over there and see if I can't cut that tongue off. That's better. When I lift up now, it feels like it's independent. Now, oh, well, there it went, and it fell in. I was trying to avoid that, but it's in there now, so maybe I can fish that out in a minute. Because we have so much rotten wood here, it's really important that I impound that wood and get it out, because termites love that kind of thing. If they find rotten wood, they're going to pounce on it, and then they're going to eat it, and then when they get done, they're going to start looking for something else to eat, and I don't want them eating our house. So let's get this vacuumed out of here. I see the board, so I can get it, hopefully. Yep, here it is. Yeah, let's just fish that out. Okay, yeah, it is tongue and groove. And yeah, it has been chewed on by something. You can see that, that's termite there. Now, I'm told that the house was certified termite free, which means that they have probably treated it and killed whatever was there, so it's no longer chewing on the house, which is good news. But we want to leave no trace behind so that they can go and eat it again. What we're looking at here is a big solid wooden beam. That sits on top of the brick wall, which forms the foundation. And yes, there is some rot right there, but it doesn't look like it's too deep. We may be able to make a repair to that. The way construction works is you have joists like this, and they're about that shape. Not quite that thick usually, but about that shape. And they run from end to end like that. And then you put your lumber on top of that. And when you put your lumber on, you have to be able to use one half of that joist for one piece of wood, and the other half of that joist for the other piece of wood. In other words, you have two pieces of wood resting on that joist. So it only stands to reason that if that joist is nice and thick, that gives you more bearing surface for your floorboards, which is a good thing. Now, I think that there's a joist under here, so I'm going to reach under it and just confirm that. Hopefully there's no spiders. I feel some webs. But yes, there is a joist. It's rough cut, which tells me this is probably a vintage one. And just to my calibrated fingers, it feels like it's extra wide. That could very well be dimensional. So I'm going to put a tape under there and measure it, and let's see what we get here. Okay. It's about as wide as where my thumbnail is, and that puts us at about, oh, look at that. It's exactly 2 inches wide. That's historic wood down there, guys. So how do we find it and how do we cut it right? Because we can't see it. We're going to do it by measuring. Now, if this is the joist, and it happens to sit right here, what I'm going to have to do is put my tape underneath the board and feed it that direction until it strikes the joist. And then once I've found that, I add 1 extra inch to it to find the center point of that joist, make a note of that, and then I mark it up on top here, and that's going to tell me exactly where I need to make that cut. All right, here we go. We're going under. I've got 10 inches. Well, it looks to me like 10 inches is right there. I'm striking the joist at 10. So if I bring it up, this is where I strike the edge of the joist, and now I pull an extra inch to the edge of where this board stops to get me to 11. So right here at the front edge of my tape, this is halfway across that joist, and this is where we need to draw a line to make our cut. I made my mark at 11 inches, and I have a square, and so I want to find the edge of the board and pull this thing right up to the mark. And I'll transfer the line across the board like that. Now, I should be able to plunge down 1 inch and go through the floorboard without going into the joist. The manufacturer of this blade was nice enough to record marks on it, so I can actually see when I hit 1 inch. Let's see, now this should come right out. Should. Because of the tongue and groove being on both sides, I had to go ahead and cut down here as well. So now it should be easier to get up. See how it's moving? This is what I would expect to see at this point, because when these boards were nailed down, they had to nail them on the joists, and that would mean that there was a nail in here somewhere. And we just happened to find it right here. So let's go ahead and give it a pull. Maybe a push. Maybe a little of both. All right, we're getting into some very dangerous stuff here with splinters and whatnot, so I've got my leather gloves on. I'm going to go ahead and just push this down, because sometimes that's the easiest way to get stuff to come out, is just push it. You see it snapped off a little bit there, which means I probably didn't cut it all the way down. And that seems to be the case here, but I don't see any nails. Now that's interesting. So the nail or nails must be here on this side. I've got the bad board out of there. So there's good news and there's bad news. The good news is this stuff is the real deal. It is quarter sawn, old growth, southern pine. And you can tell that because the growth rings are running vertical like this. That is some excellent wood there. The bad news is I'm seeing a little bit of termite damage here that continues on past the piece that we cut off. So it goes up in there ways. It's an old infestation. Generally by now, if it was alive, something would come flying out of there. Now the next step is I need to get the new piece of wood and cut it to fit the hole. There was a time when you could trust the lumber that came from your local lumberyard and home centers, and you knew that when you got wood that the ends were cut square. But that's no longer the case. Look at this. You see how far out a square that is? So never take it for granted, always check. And so I'm going to go ahead and put this on here, and we'll get squared up with the long edge. And if I can get my body out of the way long enough to do this. So we'll just do that. I think I'll take a little more, draw a line, and then we'll cut that off with the saw and come right back. I need to cut a board that's long enough to fit the space. The problem is this board has rounded edges on it, and that's why I bought the board a little extra wide, so I can cut those off and make them more square. So we know that we need about 24 inches. I'm going to actually make that 23 7/8. Then I'll transfer the mark with the square. Now, I've got to cut some off of each side so that our final board is 4 1/4 inches wide. Our board is 5 1/2 plus some change. So I think what I'll do is I'll measure in at the first inch. And I'll take my straight edge and mark that off. Now from that line, I'm going to measure 4 1/4 inches this direction. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 1/4. Mark that off. Now what I'll do is I'll take my saw, while it's still on here, I haven't cut it off yet, I'm going to take my saw and I'm going to make 2 rip cuts right down the board here until I reach the line. Look at this beautiful piece of lumber. Look how thick that is. That's the same thickness as the original. Now, you may notice, or you may not, it depends on how well the camera is picking this up, but it may have a little green tint to it. This is pressure treated lumber, and it's made for use in conditions that can be wet, which matches this to a T. So if I did everything right, I should be able to just slide it in there. In spite of my best efforts, the floorboard sits a little lower than its surrounding neighbors, and these boards may actually have been thicker than 1 inch. It probably would have been 5/4. I'm going to go ahead and nail it in because it's a temporary repair. We're just going to get it done and get it going. So I've got a couple nails on this end. There's not much for these to grip into because that big beam down there is pretty rotten. So it's more of a suggestion at this point than a mandate that these nails hold. On this end, however, I have a good solid timber underneath there. There, temporary floorboard. We'll come back and we'll put some paint on that. But first, I've got one more floorboard here that needs the same treatment. Is all. Well, something gave away.
Got it.
You got it? Yeah. Well, that explains why I fell backwards. It gave away from me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ew.
Yeah, probably. Now it's time to apply paint to the wood. I went to a couple of different stores looking to buy a quart of porch paint. Nobody would sell it to me in a quart, and I'm not going to buy a whole gallon of porch paint just to do a small repair. So I went to the scratch and dent rack there where they had a few, miscolored paints for sale at a discount, and I bought this quart here. I mean, does that look like Carhartt brown to you? I didn't anticipate that. That's just how it turned out. So if you can just humor us for a bit with this Carhartt brown on these two repair boards, eventually we will get back here and we'll replace all this porch decking when the time comes. But for now, it'll have to be Carhartt brown. We have an extension ladder now so that I can go up there and check the gutters. I'm not going to talk about ladder safety because there are already plenty of videos about that, but just know these things can be dangerous if they're not planted firmly. So Jeannie will be my spotter today.
How's it look?
Looking up here, I don't see any reason why water would be rolling over the top unless it's just hitting the top of this screen. There's a kind of a meshy screen up here, and I fully expected to see it completely covered with stuff, but I don't see anything really. There's a good bit of grit down there in the gutter, and we always have a perpetual water leak problem right here, so this is not something I'm going to be able to diagnose and fix, unfortunately. We might have to get a gutter guy out here to give it a look over. We've had a significant amount of water coming over here. In fact, you can see some of the wood is getting rotten because of it. So let's have a look. Yeah, if you can see this right here, this wood that feels very punky. So it's been getting soaked. That's not good. Probably for a good many years too. All right, I've got a good clog right here. You can't see it, but there is definitely a clog up here. I think what I need is probably a bucket and maybe a garden trowel, and I think I can just scoop this all out of here. I know you can't see this, but there's a good amount of debris up here. It's just a combination of dirt, leaves, probably a little bit of roofing material. Watch your eyes down there. The water comes from the upper gutters above me, comes down a downspout, runs across the roof, which is really a terrible idea, and then spills down into here. And there's a corner guard to keep it from overflowing, which tells me that there's too much velocity coming off of there. So it's like a Band-Aid covering a Band-Aid, I think. This is a similar thing we have going on here. There's a corner, although the downspout is above over on that side, pouring down this way. There is none here, but they put a dam up there, And these dams, all they do is they collect leaves and debris and junk. So I'm going to try to get in here and clean this out. I know you can't see it because I'm blocking your view, but just know that it is pretty well clogged. I'm not really convinced that these screens are the best solution because it just makes it more difficult to clean the gutters. They say it keeps stuff out, but I can see a pile, literally a long pile all the way down the gutters of granules off the roof and dirt. And now I can't clean it because the screen is in the way. Look at this. There's actually moss growing on here. Unbelievable. All right. Oh, wow. Look at that. I know you can't see this, but there are a lot of twigs. Lots of twigs. And it's completely choked. I'm not even using the trowel now. It's completely choked with dirt, leaves, granules. I know that high-tech gutters are big business, and maybe they work better than these things do, but I'm just not seeing that this stuff here is getting the job done. All it's doing is trapping stuff, and the gutters are probably just as full of crud as they would be otherwise. Frankly, I'd much rather be able to get in there with a scooper and clean it out once a year. I wish you could see this. There's a big carpet of moss growing inside here. If there's any gutter guys out there watching this, please feel free to chime in and let me know what you think. This is the haul. That's how much stuff we got out just in the corners where the dams were. There's a lot more up in there still that I can't get to because of the screens. But we'll save that project for another day. This paint's had a little bit of time to sit, so I'm just going ahead and putting on another coat. Of Carhartt Brown. All right, that is good to go. Have you ever had a time at your place where there was something that needed to be done and you just kind of look at it and go, well, I'll do that someday, and you put it off and you put it off and it never happens and things just continue to get worse and worse? Well, that's what the project was like for us. And if you have a project like that at your house, I'd like to encourage you to just go and take care of it.
Thank you for watching 1834 Restoration House. If you like what you see, please like, subscribe, and share. And do leave comments. We love to read the comments. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.